Welcome back, guys. So today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Retro Fighters Brawler Gen USB gamepad for the Sega Genesis Mini. Heck yeah, we just did a review of the Sega Genesis Mini earlier today. Check that out if you haven't already. But this controller is pretty cool. It's made for the Genesis Mini. That's the main focus here. But with it being a USB gamepad, can be used for a lot of other devices, Mac, PC, and the Nintendo Switch. Plus plenty of other devices as well, like the Raspberry Pi, Mister, so on and so forth. So I'm actually really interested in using this on Mister, so we will be doing some follow-up videos or streams. I like to do streams with these controllers when I'm doing multiple videos, so we'll probably just stream this, testing it on multiple other systems later. So look forward to that. I got to be planning these streams, man. I got to get to my whiteboard and start marking these streams down and planning them, let you guys know. But here we go. Let's take a quick look at the box. This does come out October 7th. Retails for $29.99. Retro Fighters did send this to me a little early for purpose of review. So we're going to take a look at this thing. So here we go. Brawler Gen USB gamepad showcases a modern and ergonomic design that is compatible with all the stuff we already talked about, providing a new and comfortable way to play your favorite classic games. Responsive D-pad, analog stick, the Brawler Gen is the ultimate way to relive those classic games. High quality, responsive D-pad, we'll put that to the test. I don't believe writing. I have to test it and find out. Comfortable and responsive analog stick. USB supports both D input and X input. They did add L and R buttons and comfortable and ergonomic design. The one thing I want to say, I've seen a few people when I kind of tease this. There was a handful of people, a couple people maybe. They're like, oh, I don't like the way it looks. It doesn't look like a Sega Genesis controller or whatever. It doesn't necessarily exactly look like a Sega Genesis controller, that's for sure. It does have this like little egg-shaped, shiny plastic beveled protrusion, egg-shaped, whatever the heck it is. The plastic around the D-pad and the buttons, which is reminiscent of original Sega controllers. But beside that and the placement of the buttons, it's the same buttons. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily look like a Sega Genesis controller because it's not really meant to fully look that way. Retro Fighters, they've been doing where they're taking classic, systems and controller types and trying to make them more comfortable, with that modern design, in mind from, what kind of controllers we use nowadays. So that's a good thing, in my opinion. For some people, they may not like that, and that's fine. I mean, it's all subjective. I haven't had a perfect experience with every controller I've had from every company. Even, with Retro Fighters, the original Brawler 64 had some issues. But the one thing I do want to point out with Retro Fighters is, yeah, I had a lot of negativity to talk about with that controller before, but they're not a company that takes that kind of stuff and just like, screw you. They actually listen to the customers. They listen to criticisms, and they go out of their way to fix those things and to make a better product. And that's what they did with the Brawler 64, and that's what they're doing with implementing, designs for newer controllers that they're working on. Is they're taking input. They're making sure things are legit. So I can appreciate that, man, because a lot of companies, they get offended easily. And I'm surprised. Retro Fighters, they're not one of those companies. They want to make sure people are taken care of. So mad respect for these guys. So a little manual it comes with, quick start instruction manual. Here we go. We're not going to read everything in here, but just this, it does have some layout stuff in here, button mapping for the different inputs, D input, X input, if you use it on a PS3, Mac, Switch, the Genesis, some other stuff for button mapping. And then we do have macros here. The macros from, what they explained to me, these are only for, if you're playing it on PC or Switch. Doesn't work for the Sega Genesis Mini, which it really doesn't need to. You don't need to worry about any of this stuff with the Sega Genesis Mini. But there we go. If you're using this for the Switch, the one thing, I'll just point it out now that I actually really like is that there is a button combination to swap the A and B and X and Y buttons. So as you see, Sega Genesis style, A, B, X, Y. Super Nintendo style, Switch style is A, B, X, Y. So with that button mapping macro, you could swap those to Nintendo style. That's useful, and I actually was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. You can't do that on here, and you don't need to. Wouldn't make sense to, but it is a nice option if you're using it for other devices. So there is that. I believe this is like a 10-foot cable. I'll double check, put a little note on the screen, but here we go. So this thing, the one thing they did point out to me is that this is a weighted controller because they took input from people from the Brawler 64 as an example. A lot of people said, you know what, these controllers, they feel kind of light. And they did, but I don't think that necessarily bothered me too much. But for some people, they wanted a little more weight to those controllers. And with this being a similar design, they went ahead and put weights. It feels like they're in the handles. I'll probably open this up on another video, but they did weight the handles down because they said a lot of people were telling them like, hey, you should have done this because I'm actually adding weights to the handles on the Brawler 64. So they did that with this one. So, hey, you know, it is what it is. It is a weighted controller, and it actually, the weight distribution, it feels good to me, so I can't complain. Doesn't feel like a cheap controller. Now, granted, it does look like basic. There's no design on here. There's nothing really going on. Retro Fighters logo is on the back. No special markings on the front. So it does look, you know, kind of basic. I mean, there's no denying that, but it's not all about, you know, that there's no design on here. Does it function? Does it work appropriately? So far from just pressing the buttons, everything feels good. The buttons actually feel very similar to the A, B, and C anyway. Feel very similar to official controllers that I've used. The mode and start, nice. The L and R, which we don't need for the Sega Genesis Mini, is there. And then we do have a D-pad right here. The D-pad rolls pretty nicely. It feels good. And the one thing I was worried about was I thought, I'll have to play it. We'll comment on it more, but I thought maybe using the D-pad I would be hitting the analog stick with my thumb, but I'm not right now. But that, we got to play a game first, you know. We got to play like Street Fighter or something to really test that. The analog feels good, nice and fluid, but hey, none of that matters until we plug it in and actually try it out. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so plugged into the G-Story mobile portable thing here. So, you know, if you leave the Sega Genesis Mini sitting for a while, it goes like a little screensaver, just kind of a tracked mode type thing. So there we go. D-pad, scrolling through the games, analog, scrolling through. Okay. Let me see if I kind of push up a little bit. Yeah. It's got that where if you kind of hold it further, it'll just auto scroll. But if you just nudge it, it doesn't keep scrolling. That's important because a lot of times these analog sticks with other controllers I've used, if you just hit it like once, it'll just start like rolling, you know what I mean? So this, you actually have to extend the analog stick to make it scroll through. Otherwise, just hitting it, just pushing it, you're fine. You're not auto scrolling through anything. Let's go ahead and get into this. Check out some game. You know what? The first one has got to be Street Fighter because 6-button controller, right? Let's make sure these buttons actually function right. And then, oh, this is the one thing I do want to point out. Take a look. I noticed this testing other controllers. The Sega Genesis Mini, this little fella, it knows if you're using a third-party controller or the controllers that came with it. It knows that, and it will not list the hold the start button. If you notice, if you've played with this and you use the controllers that are included, every game you boot up, it'll have a disclaimer right there. Not really a disclaimer, just letting you know, hey, hold the start button for 5 seconds to go into the menu. If you use any other controller, doesn't matter, it will not display that anymore. And there's a reason for that. So let's take a look. I thought that was kind of interesting. At first I was like, wait, am I seeing things? But no, that's just the way it is. And there's a purpose for it. So let's go ahead and get in here, jump into the game. See if we can do some Hadoukens. That's the main thing here. I mean, if we can't throw Hadoukens with the D-pad, the analog stick to me is not as important. But if we can't throw Hadoukens and some dragon punches with the D-pad, then this is worthless, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. So the thing I want to point out, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't do anything. But if you hold the start button for 5 seconds, you don't get that menu anymore. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. No, actually, it's a lot better of a world because now we don't have to hold a button for 5 seconds and wonder if the menu is going to come up. Or if we're further away, you can hit the reset button on the system to bring up the menu. Nope, on third-party controllers that have a mode button, bam, instant access to the system menu. That is awesome. So definitely can appreciate that. Just hit that mode button. You're brought into this screen so you can load state, save state, resume game, game reset, or return to main menu. So let's go ahead and let's try this out. We don't have the button map or anything. So I always like Sega 6-button controllers. Street Fighter, you ain't got to worry about it, man. Okay, D-pad's working, analog's working. Let's do it. Ryu versus Guile. Let's see if we could throw these dragon punches and fireballs. Boom. Oh, did you see that? I didn't do a dragon punch yet, but okay, fireballs, Hadoukens. The Hadoukis were good. We're good so far. And all the buttons are registering the way they should. Low, medium, high. Get over here. There we go. All right, let's dragon punch. Oh! All right. D-pad's feeling good. D-pad's feeling real good to me. Very nice. No issues there. Let's try the analog stick next. It's nice to have that option. I don't know if I would necessarily use this for these games, but it's there in case you want to use it. So that's kind of cool. Oh, you son of a... All right. Let's dragon punch. Oh, you fucker, he got me first. Okay. Didn't connect, but I did it. Get out of here with that. Hurricane kick. Okay. I might not be performing great against him, but I'm just trying to do moves. And yeah, the analog stick works fine. I prefer using a D-pad though. Just it feels easier for me to do, you know, the rolling motions with a D-pad for these kind of games. Get out of here. Still using the analog. Right, let me switch back to the D-pad. See if my thumb is hitting that that analog at all. I didn't really notice it the first time, but he killed me. Oh my god, that didn't happen. Edit this out. Get out of here. Okay, well, this video is going on a little longer than I expected, but my thumb is as I'm doing moves, it's not hitting the analog, but it is coming pretty close. So if you're getting kind of worked up and crazy up in this game, or, you know, any game anyway, you might hit it, but I'm not. Just coming really close, so I do have to point that out. This control, it does feel real comfortable holding these things, the handles. I mean, what else would they be called, right? So that's good. It does feel like a very comfortable controller. Everything responds well. For $30, I think a lot of people will be interested in this. I was more interested when I first seen this. I didn't know they were going to send it to me first off, but when I first seen this, I was really interested. I was like, you know what? I want to get this for Mister. So that's going to be my main thing. I'll use it for the Sega Genesis Mini, but if this works fine on Mister, that's what I wanted to use this for. So I have a couple specific reasons for that. We'll get into that more when I test it on that, but that's what I was really interested in. So I was going to buy one of these anyway. So yeah, I would have bought this regardless of them sending it to me, but it's cool that it works and it works out great on the Sega Genesis Mini. Definitely loving it, but my purpose, I really wanted to get one of these to use it for Mister. So we'll test it on that and give you guys my impressions with that. But it feels good. It feels quality to me. It does look basic. There's nothing special going on as far as looks. We don't have a Sega Genesis logo on here. We don't have anything crazy going on, which I don't mind it. It looks good to me. I really dig the look and feel. That's the biggest thing. I like the way this looks. I like the way it feels. It's a black controller, and I think it's cool. So we'll be doing some further testing in the future. Really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And with that said, I will catch y'all next time. Peace out, bye-byes, and boom. Thumbs up. Thumb butt.